What's up, everybody? Thank you for listening. I appreciate you guys. Recording here on a Monday afternoon. Want to get into the Super Bowl. Talk a little bit about Lindsey Vonn. Brian Gutekunst spoke for the Packers. First time in a while. And then close it out with a little bit of Bucks talk and some other NBA stuff. But getting right into the Super Bowl. Not the most exciting Super Bowl, to be honest. I thought Darnold started out hot. He had a great first throw to A.J. Barner. Then he had a nice sideline throw to Kupp, I believe it was. Kupp had a very nice catch. First drive, they settled for 3 on a 4th and 7. Thought it was going to be at that point initially okay. In for, the over-under was 45.5 total points scored. Was early looking like it was going to, veer towards the over. Then a couple offensive stalls, punt. And for me, the first indication, I think Vrabel wasn't necessarily playing it conservatively. I thought it was more of a frightened play call than anything else. He was playing a little scared. It was on the Patriots had the ball. It must have been towards the end of the first quarter, maybe the first drive into the second quarter. It was after a couple of punts. It was going back and forth. And the Patriots were facing 3rd and 5. And at this point, it had already been established that the run was not working. The Seattle defense was playing lights out, and it was pretty obvious at this point that they were playing tough. And on a 3rd and 5, the call was essentially run up the gut, and I didn't like it. I thought Vrabel could have been a little more aggressive, given already the circumstances and where the game was already unfolding. Got to hand it to Chris Gonzalez. Obviously, he kept the Patriots in the game. He made multiple phenomenal plays. The first one being on the drive after the Seahawks stuffed the Patriots on that 3rd and 5. Darnold had a throw down the middle to Shaheed, and Gonzalez he jumps, timed it perfectly, got his hand in there, batted down the pass. And honestly, Darnold throughout the game, he was impressive. He showed poise, slipped a couple of potential sacks, but man, he missed a couple of passes that I really felt could have broken up the game. This could have been a 45, 50-burger game for the Seahawks. He missed JSN on a route that would have been a walk-in touchdown. He missed another throw on Shaheed. He overthrew him. Would have been another touchdown. But he did play well. Finished 19 for 38, 202 yards with 1 touchdown, 1 sack, 74.7 rating. Nothing to write home about. Drake May actually finished 27 of 43, 295 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 6 sacks. Set the record for number of sacks in a playoff last night, in a playoff run. Finished with a higher rating, 79.1, than Darnold actually did. I think that is in large part because of the Seattle defense. But also the 2 interceptions, ugly by Drake. But anyway, going back so Chris Gonzalez makes his first phenomenal play. Still 3-0 at this point. And then it it started to feel, especially after that 3rd and 5 stuff, that the Seahawks at some point were going to start running away with it. And I'll tell you why, because the ensuing series, Kenneth Walker, huge hole, huge chunk yardage. I can't remember exactly. It was got a first down. I think it must have been a 12, 13, 14-yard run. Big hole. And at that point, after that, it kind of seemed that they didn't go back to the run. They tried a quick play, so quick even the broadcast, I mean, by the time they got back to the picture on the field, the ball was already incomplete. The Seahawks, I think, tried to catch a couple players off sides or while they're substituting. Anyway, it was an incomplete pass, quick play. And then 2nd down, there was a backside blitz that got to Darnold, actually. And Darnold ended up, while getting essentially sacked, threw the ball off of one of his own offensive linemen. 3rd down, they tried a toss to the outside to Kenneth, which saw no gain. So they ended up punting it away. Seahawks get another stop because at this point, this is kind of how the game's been going. And then the very next series, and this is when the trouble I thought started brewing for the Patriots, was 1st and 10, run up the gut for Kenneth for a gain of 9 yards. And that was when I just felt Mike McDonald was, oh, okay, this is what's going to work. This is working. They can't stop it. And Walker ended up finishing with 135 yards on the ground. And that wasn't big 30-plus yard runs. There was no 60-yard run. He was just gashing. McDonald started calling plays for Kenneth, running up the middle. The holes were there. Kenneth was showing patience, incredible amount of patience. I mean, textbook runner. He played really well. And he gashed the Patriots for 135 yards on the ground. Then I really knew, halftime show, Bad Bunny, great, no complaints, fun to watch, spectacle. And then the first series of the second half was when I felt the Patriots were really in trouble. 9-0 at this point. They got the ball back. They started the second half, and what did they do? Punt. 3 and out, punt. That's not how you want to start the second half. Gonzalez makes another play, keeps the Pats in the game. The Seahawks, on their touchdown drive, I felt the refs missed a pretty big flag when one of the Seahawks pushed the guy that was already well out of bounds. It was kind of dirty. I get it. Emotions are high. It's the Super Bowl. Still needs to be flagged. Should have been flagged. Seahawks go on to score on that drive. And then I just didn't get it because you go 3 quarters without a touchdown. The Patriots get the ball. And then they manage to go 3 plays, 65 yards, and 57 seconds to score. And it's like, where's that been the whole game? Maybe Drake was holding on to the ball a little too much. Either way, that touchdown drive, they made it look super easy. Reeled us all right back into the game. Okay. Something might happen. They make a stop on the Seahawks, getting the ball back. Here we go. And then Drake May throws not an interception. He loses a fumble. Ugly. And the Seahawks return it for a touchdown. At that point, they go up 29-7, and I think the game at that point was Rap City, USA. And I think this game overall gave credence to the whole argument that people were putting out there about the Patriots and their opponents. Saying the Patriots had the weakest schedule, they played the weakest opponents, they're frauds. It'll be revealed in due time, especially in the playoffs when every team's weaknesses are exacerbated. And I think now that very well could be true. Looking back at the Patriots' schedule, quickly here, they had played the Raiders, Dolphins, Steelers, Panthers, Bills, Saints, Titans, Browns, Falcons, Bucks, Jets, Bengals, Giants, Bills, Ravens, Jets, Dolphins. That's a combined record of 113 and 176. 113 and 176. So essentially, if you average that out, their opponents were a little better than 6-11, but not quite 7-10. So I gave them a tie. Their average opponent was 6-10-1. And that includes playing the Bills twice, who finished the season 12-5. And I get it. Then they finished 14-3 on the season. They play a Chargers team. They only put up 16 points on a Chargers team that was arguably limping into the playoffs, had basically no offensive line. Justin Herbert was running for his life. And the Patriots do have a decent defense. Held them to 3 points. Wasn't the toughest task to beat the Chargers in Foxborough. And then they play the Texans in a snow globe game where defenses aren't really a thing. If you count the fourth down turnovers, that game saw 10 total turnovers. So if you count the 2 turnover on downs, there were 10 turnovers in that game. It was super fun. It was a great game to watch. Slop fest. And then you go and play the Broncos and you win in a game that also turns into a snow globe game, where arguably if Sean Payton kicks a field goal and goes up 10-0 before the snow and the wind really started hitting hard, I think the result is different. But who knows if ands or buts. They end up winning 10-7 against Broncos and the backup quarterback Jarrett Stidham. And then I think they were finally exposed in the Super Bowl against the Seahawks, who came in with their QB1, who played like a QB1, and whose defense, other than somehow the Rams, because it's Matt Stafford and Puka and Devontae, who managed to move the ball on them. Aside from that, the Seahawks defense is arguably next to the Broncos, the best in the league, and the Texans. And they totally get shut down. And I don't think it was entirely a surprise. And the line before the game was Seahawks minus 4.5. I took it. Teased it down to 6.5 and kept it under 45.5. I just didn't see a way that the Patriots were going to beat the Seahawks. Unless Darnold, of course, had his Darnold-esque game. But the way he had been playing in the playoffs, I just didn't see it happening. I had faith in Darnold. The Seahawks D showed up. And they ousted the fraudulent Patriots. So moving on to Lindsey Vonn, I want to get into this quickly because there's quite a dilemma going on here. It was the women's alpine downhill earlier this week. And Lindsey Vonn, 41 years old, was going to be her last Olympics, very set on competing. Had an accident in Switzerland about a week prior to this. Got some imaging done on her knee and was confirmed to have had a ruptured ACL. And yet she goes out and still competes. Clips a gate 13 seconds into the women's downhill. Falls. Wasn't incredibly nasty, but it definitely didn't look nice either. I mean, these women are flying down the mountainside at almost 80 miles an hour. Can't imagine it being too comfortable. And she ends up getting airlifted out about 15 minutes later. So should she have been able to compete is the big debate. And on one side, I'm thinking, yes, because Olympic athletes they're representing their countries. They're representing themselves. And it is a phenomenal career accomplishment to be able to compete in the Olympics, let alone end up winning a gold, silver, or bronze. So she's not necessarily competing for anyone but herself. It's not necessarily a business decision like it would be in the NFL. So I think as long as there were medical professionals, which there were, on site, who made it clear what her injury was, what the potential risk was, what further damage could be done, what it meant for the rest of her career if she was expecting to try and ski still after the Olympics. And if she had known everything and she still as an individual decides to compete, definitely doesn't look good with the Olympics, knowing that there is a skier flying down the mountainside with a torn ACL because she decided that she can still compete. And to me, that's where the gray zone is. That's where the gray area is, because you're watching this live and you have the little Olympics logo in the corner. And this athlete has a torn ACL, clips a gate, ugly fall, terrible, and needs to get airlifted out of there. I don't like it. It's tough because if she decides that she's able to compete and she wants to compete, then she should be able to compete, no? Whereas in the NFL, I get it. If, Aaron Rodgers ruptures his Achilles, you can't tell him if you can still play, if you want to play, you can play, because, well, then the risk of further damaging and him sitting out even longer or potentially not even be able to play anymore becomes a factor. If Jordan Love injures his shoulder, tears a ligament, needs 4 weeks rest, but he says he feels good And although playing on it could mean further injury, which means surgery and sitting for 14, 15, 16, 18 months, then you have a business to run and you have someone paying him. You have someone that needs him to be back. You need someone that's wanting him to be performing at his best. But at the same time, it makes me a little aggravated about this whole medical tent, this blue medical tent. Guys take a little knock on the head. They go into the blue medical tent. And then there's a physician who doesn't clear them to go back into the game, so they can't. Like with Cooper, Edgerrin Cooper against the Bears, he was all over the place. Third quarter, he takes a knock on the helmet. He goes into the blue tent, doesn't clear concussion protocol, and then has to sit the rest of the game. I wonder if we asked Cooper in that moment, do you want to go play? Are you able to play? What would his answer have been? So should have Lindsey Vonn been able to compete on a torn ACL? And I guess to those who say absolutely because it's, her body, her choice. If she wants to compete, you let her compete. And I get that. But then where is the line drawn between we're not allowing you to compete, and yes, you're allowed to compete? Congratulations to Breezy Johnson, the American who ended up taking gold in the women's alpine downhill. Germany's Emma Eicher won silver, and Italy's Sofia Goggia took bronze. I hope I'm pronouncing their names properly. Goody spoke for the Packers this past week. Big surprise, he didn't really reveal much. He never really does. He was asked at one point if Josh Jacobs would be remaining on the roster. Of course, we value Josh Jacobs, what he brings to the locker room. All of these guys still on contract are expected to be back, blah, blah, blah. He said the same exact thing. And the funny thing is he spoke at around the same time. I think it was the first week, maybe even February 1st or 2nd, when he was asked about Aaron Jones. And he said that Aaron Jones's importance could not be Aaron Jones held such I'm trying to remember exactly what he said, but don't quote me word for word. He essentially said he expects Aaron Jones to be back. Aaron Jones was incredibly important to the locker room, and he played a vital role in the offense. What was it? 2 days later, we picked up Josh Jacobs, and for 10 minutes, we had Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones as our dual backfield, only to see Aaron Jones be released, picked up by the Vikings. 2 days after Goody spoke. So that story, which took me forever to say, basically saying it's tough to believe Goody whenever he speaks. It's nice to see him speaking, and didn't really have much emotion to show after that yet another horrendous comeback loss to the Bears in the first round. But it will be interesting because Nate Hobbs is due a roster bonus when the new league year starts, which officially begins March 11th at 4 p.m. Eastern. So this is a guy who's still, I guess, technically on contract. And Goody once again said all of these guys on contract are expected to come back, blah, blah, blah. But what do you do with Hobbs' roster bonus? He really didn't play to the level. I thought his free agency signing was, I think most Packers fans will agree, was a swing and a miss. So do you want to pay him his roster bonus? I would assume not, to be honest. And then Banks is also due a $9.5 million roster bonus, and that's on the 5th day of the new league year, so by March 16th. I'm assuming it'll be before then they come to a decision on Banks. That one's a bit trickier. The cap for 2026, the NFL has already released, has basically increased by another $20 million over last year. So you could almost see that the 9.5 could be taken out of the $20 million increase. But do you pay Banks his roster bonus? Do we keep Banks? He was a little injured. His play was a little questionable, but I thought towards the end he did play well. When he was healthy, he was becoming reliable. I wouldn't, and given where our offensive line is and the retooling that will be necessary to go into the 2026 season, I would not mind seeing Banks back on the roster. Those are the two biggest ones for me. We will see what happens with a couple of the other guys, specifically Josh Jacobs. Romeo Doubs is another one. And we'll see what happens in the cornerback room. Definitely need to make some changes there. So we'll be on the lookout. Let's move into the Bucks. Giannis is still a Buck. Giannis stays in Milwaukee. It's kind of a bit nauseating what was happening. But don't get too used to it because I'm assuming we're going to have a whole off-season of drama again. I hope Sham's credit, honestly, should definitely take a hit. It seemed some of the reporting that he was putting out there, it was almost a done deal that Giannis was going to be leaving. It was just a matter of to who and when and for what. But I don't think Giannis is necessarily a Cinderella in this story either. He did let out a post on X from a clip of The Wolf of Wall Street when Leonardo DiCaprio was telling everyone that he was essentially staying. It's a great scene. It's hilarious. Leonardo DiCaprio, phenomenal actor. Great movie if you haven't seen it. But Giannis basically posting this saying he's not leaving. And I thought it was a little odd that he waits until post-trade deadline to post this on X, where he could have made it a lot more clear earlier. But anyway, now we can't realistically, I mean, I guess you could, but Giannis, that will definitely be a way to push Giannis out. You can't necessarily shut Giannis down for the year because once Giannis is healthy again, he's going to want to come back and he's going to want to play. And I know I mentioned before, the goal now should probably be potentially to tank. We get the worst pick between the Bucks and the Pelicans, which is probably going to be the Bucks. The Pelicans are 14th in the West right now at 14-40. The Bucks are 12th in the East at 21-29. I really do not think the Bucks will be quote unquote catching up or catching down to the Pelicans. And the Bucks being in 12th place in the East They're still essentially 8 games ahead of the 13th placed Nets, who I don't think will be catching the Bucks. So at this point, it's hard to say tank. We should tank. Because you have a lot of these guys, a lot of these young guys, like Ryan Rollins, like Jericho Sims, like Pete Nance, who are getting opportunities. And when they step out on the court, of course, they're going to make the most of the opportunity. And you can't tell these guys to go out and you can't tell them that the idea is to tank. And if these guys end up being good, which they have been, I've been incredibly surprised with Pete Nance. He's finally getting some more playing time. Now all of a sudden, what's the goal here? We're a game and a half behind the 11th place Bulls. The Hornets, who I've talked about before, who are high on my radar, who I'd love to watch. They're incredibly entertaining. They're the 10th place team right now. And we are 2.5 games back. That's the last spot for the playoffs, or for the play-in, rather, is the 10th seed. So I think we have to go through these next couple games. Let's see what happens in the All-Star break. And going into the All-Star break, first of all, I want to say this last week, this is why it becomes a little complicated, because this past week, Kuzma had a great game, and we beat the Bulls 131-115. And then we went to New Orleans. The Pelicans came back to Milwaukee. And in a very exciting game, the Bucks beat the Pelicans 141-137 in overtime. I thought Miles Turner's foot, it was close. I thought he was touching paint. They looked at his left heel, but I thought it should have been his right heel that they were looking at. Either way, I thought, honestly, his right heel was still out of bounds, as much as I hate to say it, when he, on the three-pointer that he made that essentially would have ended the game. But instead, they went into overtime. Trey Murphy, in overtime, I felt kind of ended up losing it for the Pelicans. I thought he was just trying way too aggressively to keep raining threes, and it just didn't follow through into overtime. The Bucks ended up winning 141-137 again. And then we played the Pacers. The effort was there. And I get it, it's the rival. It's the Bucks' rival is the Pacers. I don't care who's on the court. It's going to be a tough game. And I appreciated the effort, finally, that I saw. And although we gave up a 20-plus point lead in the second half, the Pacers came back, made it interesting late. Bucks ended up prevailing 105-99. I feel Miles Turner, in Giannis's absence, has been playing really well, has been seeing an increase in his statistical output, rightfully so. So winning these 3 games, the first 3-game win streak of the season, if I'm not mistaken, happens at a very precarious time, because now we have essentially 3 more games before the All-Star break. In Orlando again, so we play back-to-back. Well, we play Orlando twice in 3 nights. And then we finish in OKC against the Thunder. Which, I hate to say it, but even if they rule out half their guys, I think, although we do match up well with them when Giannis is playing, I just don't see us picking up a victory there. I think if we can beat the Magic 1 out of these 2, so these next 3 games, if we're going 1-2 into the All-Star break, the Bucks will be 22-31, and we'll see what the Bulls and the Hornets do. they could just push these before the All-Star break, these next 3 games, and see where we land and reassess at the All-Star break. Although I have been very happy with Ryan Rollins. A.J. Green is playing really well. Miles Turner's playing well. Pete Nance. We picked up Cam Thomas. I'm excited. I think he can add. He can be a value add. I just like the effort that they've been playing with. Whereas before, it just felt like nobody cared. And maybe that was because of all the distraction and everything going on during the trade deadline with Giannis. But there were rumors, and people had said that the Bucks have the worst 2 through 12 in the league. I disagree with that wholeheartedly, not just because I'm a Bucks fan, but because I think there is legitimate talent on this Bucks team. It's just not been put to its most efficient use. I'll put it that way. So the Bucks play tonight against Orlando, nationally televised game on Peacock. Starting lineup is expected to be Rollins, Porter, Green, Kuzma, Turner. Kuzma's back in action. Cam Thomas, as of right now, is questionable. We'll see if I'm sure he'll make his debut either tonight or maybe Wednesday against Orlando again. Magic are at full strength, expecting to start Suggs, Bane, Franz Wagner, Banchero, and Carter. I think there were definitely high aspirations for this Orlando team before the season, but they just haven't quite met the expectations. I think they're very beatable. I've been very impressed with Anthony Black. So we will see what that game looks like tonight. I'm looking forward to seeing the effort level that the Bucks come out with. Looking over some of the big-time trades, we saw Trae Young go to the Wizards for Atlanta, who got C.J. McCollum and Corey Kispert in return. That was earlier in January. Then essentially some of the bigger deals, or more interesting ones, at least from my perspective, before the deadline, was the Cavs acquiring Keon Ellis and Dennis Schroeder from the Kings, sending out DeAndre Hunter. I think Dennis Schroeder is a solid add for the Cavs, coming off the bench, obviously. Takes a little bit of pressure off of Donovan. What else did we see? The Grizzlies traded Jaren Jackson Jr. to the Jazz. That was a pretty big trade. Jazz received Jaren Jackson Jr., Jock Londale, who was later traded again, John Concar, Vince Williams. Memphis got Walter Clayton, Kyle Anderson, Taylor Hendricks, George Niang, who was later released, and 3 future first-round picks. So that was a pretty big haul for Triple J. The Thunder acquired actually Ousmane Dieng, who was later acquired by the Bucks. Jared McCain went to OKC as well for a first-round pick and 3 future second-round picks from the Sixers. I think this kind of signaled to me that Philly was ready to kind of give up on the McCain project. I thought he looked incredibly promising, but I don't know, kind of fell off the cliff a little bit, but they still got a first-rounder in exchange for him. So not a bad deal for the Sixers. OKC is already loaded with talent and loaded with picks. So I think it's kind of a win-win for them. Maybe they give him some additional playing time with their G League team. I don't know. Is this the end? I think we'll see McCain Maybe he'll be coming off the bench. But this idea of 3 future second-round picks, the NBA and teams trading second-round picks like it's something to celebrate. I don't know. Second-round pick is nothing to write home about. Cavs acquired James Harden in a trade that saw Darius Garland and a future second-round pick go to the Clippers. So it was essentially Harden for Garland straight up. Garland's been injured, but when he's in, this might be one of those deals that next year both teams look back and both teams feel like they got the better deal. James Harden played in his first game the other night as a Cav. They beat the Kings 132-126. Harden ended up playing 32 minutes, scored 23 points, went 7 of 13, including 5 for 8 from downtown, added 2 rebounds, 8 assists, and a steal, 3 turnovers. Interestingly enough, a minus 14 plus minus. Not so great, especially in a win over the Cavs, 132-126. I get it. We'll just see what the fit is like. Obviously, it takes pressure off Donovan Mitchell, but if he's going to be playing so many points and they're going to be on the court so often together, I'm just kind of waiting to see how it turns out. I don't think, because James Harden doesn't really strike me as a player who would be totally fine with being the number 2 on the team. He likes to have the ball. He likes to have the offense run through him. That's what he's used to. So we'll see how it looks playing next to Donovan Mitchell. What else happened here? Movement on Chris Paul. Knicks acquired Alvarado. I think that was a great pickup for them. Little sneaky, cheeky little guard. He can end up bringing momentum back in your favor. I think he gets into the opponent's head a little bit. Just a little weasel on the court. And I think it was a good pickup for them. Milwaukee later added Ousmane Dieng, who, young Frenchman, definitely a project. Sent out Cole Anthony and Amir Kofi to the Suns. Although I will admit I'm more excited about Ousmane Dieng than I would have been about receiving Nick Richards, who was also part of that trade, who went to Chicago in that 3-team trade. And then Timberwolves traded for Dosunmu. Celtics added Vucevic, so they added a big. Sent out Anthony Simmons to Chicago. And Chicago's whole team is a bunch of guards now. I don't know, do they have a big? I think Boston is welcomed Vucevic with open arms. Super solid player. Another big, so they can play a bit taller. And then you had Zubats go to the Pacers for Benedict Mathurin, Isaiah Jackson, 2026, 2029 first-round picks, and a 2028 second-round pick. Porzingis went to Golden State. We'll see how many games he plays this year. Big surprise, he got traded in for Jonathan Kuminga, and Buddy Hield was the value that Porzingis brought. And people were talking the deadline, a trade involving Kuminga for Giannis. Can't imagine the haul that they would have had to attach to that if they're giving Kuminga and Hield for Porzingis. And then the other bombshell trade was Anthony Davis to the Wizards. I think the Wizards, it's too late this year, but next year, given the talent that they have between Trae Young and Anthony Davis, if he can stay healthy, could be interesting. With Alex Sarr, Koulibaly, they have young talent. And if they can surround that with a veteran in Anthony Davis, I think it could be interesting. And Trae Young, definitely on the lookout. Dallas received Chris Middleton, A.J. Johnson, Tyus Jones, Marvin Bagley, 2026, 2030 first-round picks, and 3 future second-round picks. People are saying essentially Dallas received Chris Middleton or traded away Chris Middleton for Luka Doncic. Did get a pair of first-round picks, though. So that was the big headlines coming out of the trade deadline. We'll see what the Bucks do this week. 2 games against Orlando, 1 game against the Thunder. Reassess during All-Star break. Thank you for listening. We will catch you on the next one. See you guys.